recently I got to join some of my fellow Illinois pastors for a trip to Nashville to attend a conference on discipleship. And this trip had a country music cult, a Greek god, and a little bit of trolling of our fellow pastors. So basically, it was just another trip. What's up, y'all? A lot of things have been happening here in P-Town lately, but I want to tell you about this trip because one of the goals of this channel is to help people understand Adventism, and that means these kinds of conferences that pastors and other church leaders attend from time to time, okay? Chances are, if you sit in the pew, you've heard that your pastor left to go to some conference or your conference president went to go to some conference, okay? The whole goal is to get some fresh air. That's why we go to these things, and to have some new food for thought. And at least one of the pastors who went with us is super into this idea of discipleship, okay? But honestly, I've barely studied it. So this was a new experience for me. Nashville is my adopted city, though. I started pastoring in Nashville. I have family there. Hi, Mom. What is the first thing a group of pastors do when they get to Nashville? Of course, they go to the Parthenon and pay their respects to this giant statue of Athena. This statue is apparently the tallest indoor statue in America. When it was revealed in 1990, the King of Greece came to commemorate the occasion. Now, funnily enough, some Christians at that time, in 1990, protested, saying that Nashville was committing idolatry by erecting this giant statue to Athena. And I have to confess, it is really surreal to walk into this Parthenon and see this 42-foot pagan god standing there. Okay, as a Christian pastor, it's just a little bit weird, but it got me thinking about how the meaning of religious things change over time. Is it idolatry, as this protester was saying? Is it idolatry to have the statue, or do you actually need people to worship it? It's a weird conversation to have in the 21st century, right? But it does connect us to the New Testament and to the kind of conversations that they were having back then. It's an important conversation to have. How do I relate to this statue that people used to worship around the Mediterranean as a Christian? Next, we went backstage to see the Grand Ole Opry. This was cool, but man, the Grand Ole Opry is a cult, y'all. And it's not just because my girl T Swift is not a member, even though she kicked off her career there.
So we just got done with the Opry, which was like, it's like, you can't really say it in words, but it was really awesome. Like, it was so cool. This is the moment that you're waiting for, like the whole life process.
The managers have to ask you to be a member of the Opry, okay? If you have to reflect sufficient commitment to the Opry. You have to really just buy into this cult in order to ever be a member there. And people, man, they're in tears when they finally get asked to join the Opry. And then you get to screw your nameplate to a wall backstage. Yeah, it's cool, but it's totally a cult. Now, the Discipleship Conference itself was cool. It was definitely an evangelical party, and I had more than one occasion where I had to explain what Adventists believed. I saw this really short book on the end times. There was this table full of books. One of them was on the end times. It was really thin, and I'm an Adventist, so I'm passing because we don't do short books on the end times. If you can't drop a 900-page tome on Revelation, then you haven't even begun to think about Bible prophecy, okay? We want this thick stuff. None of these thin books, like you barely even read the book of Revelation, okay? So this guy, he saw me, I was like, I don't want that book. He's like, well, what do you Adventists believe about the end times? And we locked eyes, and I thought, could this be the one? Because we really love it when people ask us about what we believe, and especially about the end times. Like, I'm going to Joseph Bates this dude. I'm coming over to your house, buddy. We're going to be up all night studying the Bible. But I did find it was really hard to boil down, what do Adventists believe about the end times in like 2 sentences? How would you answer that question? Anyways, the whole goal of these discipleship books and events and the other things is to impress upon people the need for discipleship, right? The need to learn how to follow Jesus after you are baptized. Evangelicals, like other Christians, realize that 30 to 50% of people that they are baptizing just end up walking out the back door at some point. Churches put so much effort into making the front door as inviting as possible and encouraging people to come in that they don't do much to help people remain and become mature Christians once they're already inside. So a lot of speakers were talking about the cost of discipleship. That was a theme this year. Or as one speaker put it in one case, the cost of not discipling your church members. There was talk of how pastors can create groups of leaders to surround them and hold them accountable and support them and help them in this journey of discipling others, right? Pastors need help too. There was talk of how people spend so much time consuming media that the culture is discipling them better than the church is. And there was even talk about homosexuality, but, of course, it's an evangelical conference. What would an evangelical conference be like if someone didn't complain about sex? Okay, and I'm not gonna get into that one, okay? Okay. Speakers also talked about the need not to see America as our savior, not to get too tied to one particular political party. Now, if you're Adventist, that's a duh moment, right? Because we've been calling America a beast since the 1850s, before it was cool. And later on, evangelicals were all like, you guys aren't patriotic, you Adventists. Why don't you pick up a gun and go kill people for your country and for Jesus like we do? And now the tables have turned, my friends. Seriously, though, it was a really brave thing for those presumably Baptist leaders to come to the Bible Belt and say something like that. I mean, it does take courage. And hey, we're with you guys on that one, okay? Overall, it was a great trip. We even went to the Kentucky-Tennessee Conference of Seventh-day Adventists and, just trolled them a little bit. I bought some books at the conference. I took some notes. Some of it will end up in a sermon sometime next year. But the most important thing to me was just hanging out with my fellow pastors. Ministry can be a really lonely place. And it was great to just get out of town for a couple of days, to go to an event and just be fed. I don't know how I can impress upon you like the importance of this. To go to a place where I don't have to preach or perform or organize or be responsible for anything. Oh, it was beautiful. I just want to encourage you guys. If you're in ministry and are getting burned out a little bit, which has been the story of the last 18 months, take your vacation. I just learned that I have over 3 weeks of vacation that I didn't use this year, and it's November, okay? So go to a conference. Even if it isn't a conference you particularly care about, just get out of town. Sometimes pastors just forget how to feed themselves because when we read the Bible, we're reading it. No, there's an insight. Let me throw that into a sermon. Or here's another thing. Let me put that into a Bible study or something like that, right? The things that we learn when we read the Bible sometimes we don't feel like they're for us. We get them. We receive them only to give them away to somebody else. So feed yourself. Take care of yourself. Second thing is, hey, if things have gone stale and stagnant for you, look for ways to keep growing. Shake things up a little bit. Maybe it's time for a little reinvention in your ministry. So pray about that. Anyways, thanks so much for watching. I will see you guys next time.